welcome, folks. We're really excited to be hosting this event with you all this afternoon. Again, my name is Aaron Danowski, and welcome to our Applying to Gonzaga as a First-Year Student webinar. Thank you for coming from all over the world. Sao Paulo, Brazil, welcome. So exciting to have you here. My name is Aaron. Like I said, I'm a senior admission counselor at Gonzaga. I work with students predominantly from Oregon, Southwest Washington, a couple parts of the Mid-Atlantic region over on the East Coast, New York down to Maryland and a little further beyond. I will be one of your hosts for this webinar this evening. You may have noticed you're not able to turn on your cameras or audio. That's just so that we can record this for those who aren't able to attend, but we'd love to answer your questions as we go through this presentation. So please type your questions into the Q&A feature rather than into the chat. And we will have my colleague Alexa and a couple of other our colleagues who will be answering them as we go through. If we get through as many as we possibly can, if we have any towards the end, we might bring them up and raise them for the group to listen to. Feel free to also use the chat periodically to be able to respond to questions my colleagues and I will have for you, as well as share the web pages that we hope that you will find helpful. Now, I have a couple of colleagues I'd like you to meet. We'll start off with Becky, who is co-hosting this webinar. Becky, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes, my name is Becky Doyle, and I am an admission counselor here at Gonzaga. I work especially with students from California along the Central Coast and in the East Bay area, and I'm happy to help you guys throughout this process.
Excellent. And then my colleague Alexa here answering in the Q&A section and posting some chats. Alexa?
Hi, everyone. Yes, my name is Alexa Gasky. I'm an assistant director of admission. I work with students in the state of Nevada as well as Southern California, so kind of Santa Barbara, Kern County down south. And as Aaron mentioned, I'll be answering all of your questions in the Q&A.
Excellent. The dream team right here. To get us started, actually, about the application process, let's do a quick poll. I want to hear where folks are at right now. How many of you have started your Gonzaga application? You should see a poll pop up on your screen. Feel free to answer on there. Let's see where everybody is at. Excellent. Seeing plenty of responses coming in. Yeah. Looks like so far most students have started, but they have not submitted. We have a good chunk who have not yet started their applications. That is okay. You are not alone. We have plenty of time to get through those applications and get them submitted effectively. We will share those results in here so you all can see. Alexa, anything else you want to add on that before we get started?
No, it's exciting to see that students have already found us on the Common App, and we look forward to reviewing them.
Love it. Common App, our favorite thing. We know the college application process can be very stressful. So our hope for the three of us this evening is to help relieve some of that stress and give you a little bit more of the details about what to expect, what you do and don't have control over. We're going to do our best to give you some insight into how our process works when we're reviewing an application, as well as identifying the parts of the application that we'd like to see you spend some time carefully on. So why don't we go ahead and get started. At Gonzaga, like you heard, we do use the Common Application for both domestic and international first-year students. The application is accepted by hundreds of universities across the country and around the world, so it decreases the number of forms you have to fill out for each school. The cost of the Common Application for Gonzaga is $60, so that's something to be aware of. We'll talk about fee waivers and things in a moment, but before we get to that, I do like to just mention Gonzaga has an early action and a regular decision deadline. Early action is our non-binding process, which means that you can apply by the November 15th deadline, hear back your decision by the end of the calendar year, and then you will still have until May 1st to make your college decision. Regular decision applications are going to be due by February 1st, and students will be notified about their decisions by early March. If you do need an application fee waiver for the Common App, there are a few ways to go about that. First, you can use a box that the Common App has to check where you can request a fee waiver for economic reasons, and that will be verified by your high school counselor to confirm that. Additionally, Gonzaga offers an opportunity to have alumni submit waivers on behalf of students through the alumni page of the Gonzaga website. It's under benefits, but we never really want to have the inability to pay the application fee be a barrier for applying to Gonzaga. So if that is coming up and you do feel stressed or anxious about that, please do contact our office so that we can counsel you on the best way to move forward.
Awesome. And we read our applications holistically here at Gonzaga. So we look at 5 main factors for most of you, and then 6 if you decide to submit your test score and want to use it. We are test optional, so there's going to be more about what test optional means in a moment. But the first of the 5 factors is grades and grade trends. When we look at a student's GPA, we also consider their grade trends, whether grades are going up or down or staying the same throughout your high school experience, and circumstances that may have led to that trend, including challenges throughout this pandemic, throughout the pandemic a couple years back. The middle 50% of students enrolled at Gonzaga were between a 3.47 to 3.9 unweighted GPA this past year. So this means that 25% had a GPA below a 3.47 and 25% had GPAs above a 3.91 on an unweighted scale. We use unweighted GPAs so that all students are on the same 4.0 scale, while at the same time looking at curriculum separately and giving considerable weight to that as well. So all students applying to Gonzaga should have a standard college prep curriculum. And by college prep curriculum, we mean that students should have 4 years of English, 3 to 4 years of math, 3 years of a social science, 2 to 3 years of the same language, and 3 to 4 years of science. We know that more challenging classes can make for students who are better prepared for college. So we encourage you to take challenging courses that are available to you and still allow for that balance in your life, right? In addition to preparing students for better for college and therefore factoring into the application and merit scholarship a student may receive, many times students can also bring in credits if they meet certain test requirements or the college classes they've taken are equivalent to ones offered at Gonzaga. So we're going to add a link to the chat showing our AP, IB, Cambridge, and Running Start college and high school policies and equivalencies for you guys to take a look at. But please note that if you will have college credit from college courses you took while in high school or AP, IB, Cambridge tests you took, you are still considered a first-year student with credit and not a transfer student. You may have enough credits to have junior standing in college, but you'll need to follow all the deadlines for first-year students. So either November 15th, early action deadline, or February 1st for admission. And you are eligible for both first-year scholarships, all 4 years, but not the transfer one. So you kind of get the best of both worlds associated with that too.
There's one quick thing that we want to make sure that you're aware of, and that's particularly if you're interested in majoring in nursing. This is a direct entry program. So for any students who intend to study nursing at Gonzaga, we ask that you list your interest in nursing on the application for first-year students itself. We have a fairly small program for nursing. It's about 80, 85 students per year, and it's our most competitive major, in large part because it is a direct admit program. The first thing we look for in our nursing applicant pool is 4 years of math and science in your high school curriculum. And we do prefer biology and chemistry, other life science labs and courses such as anatomy and physiology. Other sciences are fine, but any chance that you have to kind of demonstrate to us your interest in the health fields is really valuable. It's also really nice when you have had opportunities to shadow or have volunteering experience in health settings, if that's available to you. We recognize that that's not necessarily the reality for all students, so this isn't something that's required, but it is something that we encourage students to seek out better understanding of the nursing profession so that they can write and speak to it well in their application. Students can only enter the nursing program as a first-year student, since it's a cohort-based model with students taking their classes and clinicals together. It is not possible to transfer into the program later. Even if you apply to Gonzaga, are admitted, and then before even enrolling, choose to switch into nursing, that is not a possibility. It has to happen before you apply. It's also important to note that the November 15th deadline is required for all nursing students. That is to make sure that you have the opportunity to be considered in the nursing pool and not be bumped to the nursing waitlist automatically, which is what will happen if you apply after November 15th for the nursing program. On another topic, test scores are a big thing that we're hearing about these days. With the exception of homeschooled students, Gonzaga remains test optional for admission for all majors. That includes nursing. All scholarships and special programs such as the honors program are also test optional. So you don't have to worry if not submitting a test score will impact your merit aid or your ability to access special or more competitive programs. Any students applying without a test will be able to have their tests not affect that way that we're reviewing their application. So we just increase the weight we give to your grades, the curriculum strength that you've taken, and the writing that we see in the rest of your application. If you do have a test score and you're wondering whether or not to submit it, you can see the middle 50% ranges for our incoming class, about a 1250 to 1400 for the SAT and a 28 to a 32 for the ACT. You're more than welcome to reach out. In fact, I encourage you to connect with your admission counselor to better understand if submitting a test score is in your favor. But generally, if you already have a strong curriculum and your GPA is pretty high, 3.8, 3.9, you would have to have a really high test score for it to make sense to add something in addition to your application. So the default should probably be not submitting a test score unless it's really stellar in either way. Homeschooled students, though, it's a slightly different story. If you have more than 30 semester or 45 quarter credits of transferable community college or college credit when you apply, you don't need to submit a test score. But those who don't have that threshold of college level coursework, who may just be taking courses at the high school level, we will need to see a test score submitted. For all applicants on our Gonzaga questions page of the Common App, you will be asked to mark whether or not you want to have an SAT or an ACT test count as part of your application. This is the area where we will determine if you are test optional. If you mark no, we won't use your scores, even if you've had them sent to us previously. If you mark yes, we will use your scores. And if you have not told us what your scores are through an official report, we will keep trying to contact you to get those test scores if they're missing from your application. If you've taken the same test more than once, we will superscore your overall score, taking the best scores from each subsection, such as math and evidence-based reading and writing on the SAT, and we add them together so that you're using your scores that best represent your capacity to succeed. It's always helpful to provide us with all of your scores if you do intend to submit your tests so that we can see and use the highest ones from each subsection. Again, all of us are admission counselors on this call. If you have questions about this, or if you change your mind on using a test score, and if we haven't yet finished our evaluation process, we can make that shift for you. The deadline to submit a test score is December 1st for early action, so 2 weeks after the initial deadline, and February 15th for regular decision. For international students, we ask that you do submit a test to show your English proficiency. We'll put a link to that chat in the chat for where you can find that information, which tests qualify, what the requirements are to show proficiency, such as an online Duolingo test. If your scores are below our proficiency guidelines, then you don't qualify for a waiver, the Gonzaga Global Program might be a good fit for you, because it provides English language support, which will then help you to be successful as you enter into your undergraduate studies at Gonzaga. If you choose to use a test score to meet the English requirements, you will still have the option to be test optional for admission.
Awesome. And as a part of our holistic review process, we consider your commitments to your outside of school activities as well. We're looking for more depth in an area rather than that you've done everything offered under the sun at your campus. Gonzaga is a very community-oriented place, and our students get really involved on campus and in the community, so we seek students who enjoy being involved, starting new clubs, serving as leaders in some capacity, and engaging in their communities. Please note that working, volunteering, and family responsibilities are important to list as they show responsibility, dependability, and engagement in your community. So to say, like, we don't value one type of activity over another, such as sports over music or music over DECA. We're interested in all the talents, passions, and abilities you bring to your college community or bring to your high school community so that we can bring it onto our campus at Gonzaga. So we also recognize that during the COVID years, way back when, opportunities for extracurriculars were a little bit more limited. So hopefully you guys get more opportunities right now in your high school experience, but also taking that into consideration. The Common Application also requires an essay, and there's a short answer question on our Gonzaga questions page, and another one that will appear if you choose to mark yourself as a nursing major. Finally, there's also a section on the Common Application that allows you to address any hardships and issues you've had as a result of anything going on throughout high school, including the pandemic, natural disasters, and there's a section where you can address your dips in your grades or other academic or personal challenges and recoveries. So take advantage of that section. That's a good place to give us some additional context to anything else that may have happened in your life or anything that we don't get from your application elsewhere. So we do encourage you to use these sections if they apply to you, so you can give us some more context for your personal situation, environment, and academic history as well.
Let's talk for a moment about the Common Application essay. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of stress dreams that happen about this, so let's try and address them a little. On the Common App, you'll be able to pick from 7 different prompts. I know many of you have started the Common App, maybe you've already looked at these. There is also the option to make up your own questions, so technically there's as many prompt options as you want. We do encourage you to pick one that speaks to you and one that you can write well about, so don't pick it because you think we have a favorite. We want to hear which one works best for you. I also would encourage you to try and narrow your topic rather than make it broad. So for example, if you're writing about a passion for a sport, take swimming, for example. If you have a topic that's broad, like what I learned, how my passion for swimming emerged over the last decade. That's okay. But if you can talk more specifically about how taking swim lessons, 10 years ago led to you becoming a swim instructor now and how that's shaped the way that you better understand who you are and how you can serve your community. That's a very different, much more specific and helpful reflection for us to be able to see in your essay, in your application. We also really want to see that you can write well, and we want to see how you have learned to both present yourself and also what we can learn about you from your essay. So you're welcome to be really creative with this. Every year, I feel like we share stories of students who do this particularly well. So, I mean, like last year, there was a student who she wanted to be a journalist, so she wrote her essay interviewing herself 5 years into her career, or someone who writes a poem and shares how that poem transformed their notion of self-identity. The best essays are the ones that let us experience what you've experienced. And when we read them, it's not that you're telling us what you've done, but rather showing us what the experience would look like. So for example, students oftentimes, if they've been involved in debate, they can say, I've been on the debate team for all of my high school years, and I've won many tournaments, and it's been intense and scary, but I really enjoy it. And that's great. But showing is a little bit more effective. So you could say something like, and we took this from one last year, I scribbled furiously as my opponent finished her argument, making sure I could counter each point. Then, as it was my turn to speak, I pushed away the anxieties that had plagued me for years. The usual rush of energy started to come over me, and I remembered I live for moments like this. That brings us in. That on an application reading day, we love to see and hear and just lose ourselves in that space and really identify with you a little bit more. Strong essays are the ones that use this sort of vivid imagery and sometimes dialogue as well. They reflect on what the experience meant to you, and they tie the end of the essay back to the beginning. So oftentimes a strong opening line, it really behooves you to come back to that and be able to tie it all together really neatly. Please, please, if you take nothing else away, proof your essays for errors. Proofing is the least favorite thing of any of us to do, but we have plenty of tools these days that we can use to make sure to do this, the least of which is just asking a friend to take a look. I can't tell you how many times I have read an essay that has had like lower capitalized, not uncapitalized I's. I still remember an essay that had 14 uncapitalized I's in it. And it's not to say that that made or broke the person's admission decision, but it definitely did color the way that I understood how the student took the care in crafting the application itself. So make sure that you're giving us the right impression of you and your work and how you want to be perceived in the application process overall.
Awesome. And again, as we're a community that really cares about one another, the final piece that we look at is your character. And character truly does count. You've been hearing it since the first grade, but we can see that through a letter of recommendation from an academic subject teacher. Please make sure it's someone that you had in class, please, not just a coach. And also your secondary school report filled out by your high school counselor or school office. A letter from your high school counselor is not required, though if your counselor sends one, we definitely will add it to the file. And any letters of recommendation that you send in, we will take a look at as well. And then a final option is to do an interview with a counselor, one of my favorite things to do in my job. And as you can see, we highly recommend for students with a 3.2 GPA or lower, or anyone who just feels that they want to talk with an admission counselor, may better help explain their academic history or personal needs better. I think that it's a great opportunity just for us to get to know you a little bit better, place a face to the application, right? So really encouraging anyone to do that. We're also happy to meet with students no matter what your GPA is, and academics show. As the more we know about you, the better. We can connect you to special opportunities that we think would be a great fit for you at Gonzaga, such as separate application scholarships that may be a good fit for you as well. So it's a really great opportunity for you guys too. But we offer interviews via the phone, video chat over Zoom, and in person if you're able to visit campus. And you can sign up for those on our virtual Gonzaga and Visit Gonzaga pages that we'll put into the chat too. But you're also welcome to contact the admission counselor for your region to learn more about Gonzaga and to answer any questions that you might have. That works as well. So we'll add the Find Your Counselor webpage to the chat. And if you do interview with us, we cover your questions, individualized information on majors of interest, as well as scholarships and financial aid too. Awesome. And speaking of scholarships and financial aid, we're offering a webinar on November 13th at 6 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time that covers scholarships and financial aid. Highly, highly recommend you guys go to this. So we hope to see you guys back for that one in November. We will also be hosting a number of webinars throughout the fall and into the winter to share more about our resources on campus, specific programs, and the FAFSA. So we hope you can join us for those.
Awesome. Thank you, Becky. That was a bunch of information that we shared with you in a pretty brief amount of time. So we hope that this has been somewhat helpful to just walk you through the process of what we look for in the application. And now we'd love to turn it over. I think Sandra and Alexa have been doing heroic work in the Q&A, but let's see if there are any questions that we want to address all together here in the rest of our time.
Yes, thank you, Erin and Becky, for all of that information. Folks, kind of a last call here. Of course, we do have quite a bit of time to answer questions. So if you have more, please continue to put them in the Q&A, and we'd be happy to answer all of them. And we did also put in the chat the link to find your admission counselor, so you can always reach out to them directly. But Erin or Becky, could you please address the concerns of students who may be attending schools, either rural schools or other schools that don't provide a ton of AP or advanced or honors courses? Does that give a student a disadvantage in our admission process?
That's a really good question. The short answer is no. So the longer answer, if you'll bear with me for a moment, is when we are reviewing an application, we actually receive detailed information from your high school counselor that gives us a better rundown of the opportunities that are available to the students. This is also part of the reason why we have counselors assigned to specific territories so that we better understand the specific schools, the specific areas that an individual student is applying from. So we review an application, yes, looking for how well you've challenged yourself, but also with the context of what you've had available to you. In some cases, I see students in more rural areas who are able to take a dual enrollment class at the community college nearby, or find different ways of pushing themselves. But in a lot of cases, it's just not feasible, and that's okay. What I would encourage students to do in that case is you're welcome to address it in your application, particularly if you're also applying to schools where you don't know that they know your school as well. It can be beneficial to address it and mention all the ways that you've gone above and beyond seeking to challenge yourself and grow. But just know that we like having that context and we receive it in multiple different ways. Becky, anything you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, the only thing that I would add is that sometimes I know for some schools that are smaller, if you don't have a teacher to teach that specific class that year, just also noting that maybe AP, you were going to take AP Psych and you were ready to start, and then they ended up not offering it that year. That's another thing to add in the additional information section. But yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Can you speak to qualities that Gonzaga looks for in applicants? Not so much GPA or curriculum, but more along values and personal characteristics.
It's a big one. Let me see how I can boil down my thoughts here. I think There's a couple of key things that we like to see. But first off, Gonzaga is a Jesuit institution. We have a mission of serving others, being people for and with others. So we really like to see students who have demonstrated ways of engaging in their community in high school. That can be in a lot of different ways, but students who have been intentional with creating opportunities for themselves to connect with their communities, to be leaders in their communities, whether that's in the high school setting or in the broader areas in which they live. I also think that there is sort of this Gonzaga platonic ideal of the student who is also an athlete, who is also involved in their faith life, who's all the and student who is doing just about everything. And that's not something that we always works out well for our mental health, but we do look for students who are sort of well-rounded in that way, who want to have an intentional kind of mind, body, and spirit education. Now, that doesn't mean that you have to be overtly religious or Catholic in order to attend, but just an openness to learning about the world and the myriad of ways that you can engage with it, I think, are two of the things that stand out to me most when I'm thinking about this. Becky or Alexa, Sandra, feel free. You guys are also Gonzaga alums. You can answer this too.
Yeah, I'll just add that with like sometimes when I'm reading stuff that happens outside the classroom, I think that tells me so much more about you as a person too. I think it's great when you challenge yourself in courses, but also especially in those like interviews, that's when I really get to know you one-on-one. You become a student that has passions, and I think that's one big thing for me is I don't necessarily mind what extracurricular you're involved in. Just show me that you are passionate about something, that you're driven towards something, whatever that might be. It could be music, could be sports, could be leadership, could be DECA, stuff like that, where I think that where I'm like, wow, like you would bring something that I think would be really amazing and valuable to this campus. And I think that's something that I think is really amazing about our campus and people getting to know each other, is that everyone's bringing something special and unique to the table. So that's something that I love to see when in those interviews and on applications too.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question. Could you speak more? And this is a little bit away from applications, but it kind of goes towards what we were talking about a little bit. But just the importance of community on Gonzaga's campus and how that presents itself in its students and its faculty.
Yeah, absolutely. I was giving a tour the other day over the summer, and as I was walking backwards, chatting with some of the students on the tour, I felt this like hand tap me on the shoulder, and it was one of my professors that I had had in class. He actually was the professor who had an individualized course with me. We created independent study together, and this was like 10 years ago. And he was just super excited to see me on campus and to connect and to say how much he loved the Gonzaga community and how I felt like that was a really good concrete moment for students to see that. This is a place, listen, any school that you listen to talk, they'll probably tout their community and the way that they are together with one another and how that helps their students succeed. It's a cliche, but it's also intensely real here at Gonzaga. Freshmen and sophomores are guaranteed a place to live on campus. That dorm life is one of the big things that galvanizes a sense of identity. Being a Gonzaga student, being a Zag, going to your first basketball game, being plugged into study groups right away, having your RA check in with you monthly and organize events for your dorm, your hall, all of these ways that even the soft ways of connecting. It's not even just all the clubs and activities and things happening every single day. It's also those soft moments where you're walking across campus or going to the dining hall, you see a familiar face, you haven't seen each other or chatted in a week, you get back together and you get to really be in community with one another in a way that makes this place feel really special. And you have that support in addition to the moments that you feel challenged and pushed to become better.
Yeah, and I'll just add, like, I graduated from Gonzaga a couple years back. And I think one of the biggest things that it's like a no man left behind type of mentality on campus. It's called Zags Help Zags. This is a common phrase that people say across campus. And yes, it sounds cheesy, but it's something like, that I think is really just an energy and a motto that we have. But I think the nice thing is I didn't just have like my fellow students looking out for me, but I had like faculty, staff, everyone noticing, and I felt like I mattered on this campus, which was really amazing. But like, even as an example, like I had a professor in class that saw that I was having a rough time that semester with personal things, and just being that extra person to be like, hey, like, how you doing today? Like, can we go get a cup of coffee? Like, do you want to chat for a bit? And I think that really made a difference, and not just like my commitment to this campus, but also like my commitment to like showing up every day and feeling like, okay, I'm going to put my best foot forward, because I have like people that are always there to make sure that I'm lifted up in those moments too.
I'll also add, I still remember coming to campus for my, preview day that I attended. I did an interview with an admission counselor, and I think they were one of the first people that I connected with when I was back on campus in the fall. And we met up every couple of months. There, it starts with this office. The people and I'm not just talking about us who are here tonight, but also your admission counselors. They do this work because they want to embody what that community looks like from day one. Whether you come to Gonzaga or not, we want you to be part of this community in a way that is genuine. And so just don't be afraid to connect with us. I always joke, I don't think I'm a scary guy. I want to be, approachable and engage with students. And I think that's really where we start, that building that sense of identity together.
Awesome. Kind of on that note, Aaron, with you not being a scary guy, and hopefully what you get is no one on our team is scary. But this kind of leads to the next question of what can a student expect in an admission interview?
Yeah. Becky, do you want to take it?
Yeah, so when you come in for an admission interview, I feel like sometimes it's very like you think it's going to be this intimidating experience, but it's someone just like me sitting across the desk from you, and I just ask you questions, genuinely trying to get to know you a bit better. So you don't see everything in an application or a transcript. So I think that it's an opportunity for us to talk a little bit about how you're doing academically in high school. What do you do outside of classes and extracurriculars? What are things that really drive you? And maybe any challenges that you faced. But then at the end of those interviews, I think the really amazing thing is then we get into like the meat of it. Like, okay, what are your goals for the future? And how can we like make sure like you're the best applicant possible, right? So I think those interviews are more of an opportunity for us to get to know you on a more one-on-one basis. But then also at the end of that, ask any questions that you have of us. For all of our counselors in the office, we have lots of great experience. And if one of us doesn't have the answer, chances are someone else in the office knows the answer to that question. But I think that is a really great thing about these interviews is taking time for us to get to know you. And then also you get one of us for 30 minutes to ask any questions you might have too. But yeah, Aaron, anything else to add?
I think that's it. I mean, in its ideal form, it's a conversation. This isn't us grilling you. There's no right or wrong answers. It's a chance for you to be who you are and to get to learn more about who we are. At the end of the day, our retention rate at Gonzaga is 94%, in large part because students, when they get to campus, have a sense of what they're expecting, and then we're able to meet it. And that starts by engaging intentionally with our office and with students on campus and really making sure that you feel informed as you're making a college decision. So I think that's just it. It's a conversation, it's a chance to get to know you better and for you to get to know us.
Sorry, lost my mouse there. Thank you. Can you explain what early action is, specifically when we talk about binding and non-binding? So what is that difference for students?
Absolutely. So some school, key thing to understand, higher ed is not a monolith. There are lots of different kinds of institutions that have lots of different admission processes. At Gonzaga, we have early action and regular decision. Some schools have a third kind of admission that's called early decision. So early decision is binding. That's where if you apply to that school and they accept you, you have to go. We don't do that at Gonzaga. We say early action. That's where you can apply to us early, you can hear back from us earlier, but you still have that flexibility to be able to apply multiple places, to be considering your options up until that May 1st decision deadline. May 1st is still a decision deadline if you do regular decision. It just means that you have slightly shorter time frame to actually be able to determine that. So early decision is binding, early action is not. And you can look at some of the other schools that you may be looking at. That's the key distinction to understand.
Thank you. And this is one that we can touch on briefly, but asking about the breakdown of merit scholarships, and how they are awarded. Are they solely based on GPA, or what other, factors are used?
Yeah. Becky, do you want to start? I don't want to
Sure.
just.
No,
You
you're
go.
good. No. So when I'm looking for like merit scholarships in an application, so first thing is you're automatically considered for merit scholarships just by applying. So basically everything that I'm reviewing for your admission decision, I'm also reviewing for merit scholarships. So like we talked about with curriculum, difficulty of coursework, grades and grade trends, extracurriculars, test scores were test optional. So if you submit that, that's one of the 6 factors instead of 5. As well as character and our writing supplements too. So all of that goes into the decision that helps with those merit scholarships that you're automatically considered for too. So those can range from a wide variety of different things as well. We have a couple other extra scholarships too. If Aaron, you want to speak to that, some of those require a separate application. So
Yeah. So when you apply the bulk merit scholarship, you're considered for based on all those factors. It's not as simple. Some schools, they'll have like a GPA matrix. If you have this GPA, you'll get this amount. We are more holistic in how we review. But we also have an honors program, for example, that we ask students to submit a separate application for. That can come with an additional $1,800 per year in merit scholarship. And you can actually have a credit fee waiver. So you can take 21 or 24 credits without having to pay extra. So there's a couple of hidden scholarships in that way that you can access, but it does require a separate application. For our Washington State-based students, we have our Unity Scholars program. That is a separate application as well. Alexa can speak a little bit more to that if you'd like. But we've tried to shrink down the number of additional applications that we ask you to submit to be considered for merit scholarships.
Awesome, thank you. And then we do have several a webinar scheduled for financial aid and scholarships later on in the spring. So please be sure to check that out and register for that. Or you can, of course, review the recording if you can't attend, and that will also be in connection with our financial aid office. So we will be covering quite a few ways that we help students finance their education at Gonzaga. But we've gotten quite a few questions about engineering specifically as a direct admission program. And again, we are not a direct admission engineering program, but some questions just about math preparedness to be a strong applicant for engineering at Gonzaga. And so can you just talk generally about the engineering programs, what the curriculum looks like, and how students can best prepare to be successful in it?
Yeah, absolutely. So key thing to understand, we're not a direct admit program, but we do expect to see students have 4 years of math and science. The first semester of coursework in the engineering programs begins with calculus. So ideally you're up through pre-calculus before you attend. We ask all students who are intending to major in a STEM field to take a math placement test over the summer. So regardless of what coursework you've taken before, that is going to really dictate where you're going to start with your math coursework in the engineering and even biology and other STEM programs specifically. Our engineering programs are ranked in the top 6% in the nation. We have tons of different options, electrical, civil, mechanical, computer engineering. We just recently added biomedical engineering as an official major. We have a minor in robotics that we recently added. So the first semester of coursework in our engineering programs is virtually identical across all those fields. Since it's not a direct admit program, that also means you can switch which intended major you intend to do. We don't read an electrical engineering app any different than we do a mechanical engineering app, because in most cases, we see that students are really only going to start to go in that direction once they arrive in college. There are some limited options where you might have taken a course in high school or through community college that might transfer in. I know specifically for Portland Community College, there are a few that would be specifically engineering, courses. But by and large, the coursework that you'd be taking is identical. The key thing to also understand about our engineering programs, we have a beautiful brand new Belir Integrated Science and Engineering Center, $65 million, 80,000 square feet or something like that. I can't remember exactly. But it has state-of-the-art research facilities for our students. And all of our seniors in the engineering programs are required to do a senior design project. So it's 9 months working with an industry partner to create a deliverable for the real world. The goal of it is really to make sure that you have an on-ramp to your employment, whether it's with that organization or somewhere else, but you have an opportunity to do a team project in your field of interest, in your sub-discipline of interest, to really kind of cap off your experience at Gonzaga. Any other thoughts, Becky?
Nope, I think you covered all of it. Yeah.
Thank you. Can you speak about just general life as a ZAG? Workload over the 4 years, what's it like going into classes, about the weather, things like that?
Ooh, I can speak to the weather. So I'm from Southern California originally. So when I moved up to Washington State, I had never seen snowfall until I came to Gonzaga's campus before. So I would say one of the biggest things to know, especially if I have any California students in the chat, is we do have the 4 seasons in Spokane. Trust me, you will be okay. We'll kind of talk about what that looks like. But yes, so for our weather on campus, we do have the 4 seasons. It's a really beautiful fall. You can kind of see it behind me a bit too, with the changing leaves and colors, getting kind of cozy for the year. In winter, I'd say from about November to end of February, we do have a good snow season. I used as an excuse to like try new things for the first time. In Southern California, I never got to ski, snowboard, sledding. I had my first snowball fight out on Mulligan Field. And I think that was something that was really special, was I tried a new environment for 4 years, ended up falling in love with it and staying afterwards. And then a really beautiful spring. And then in the summertime, really great lake life. We're right along the Spokane River, which is popular for students as well. And I would say this, like, but really great community in Spokane. So you kind of get to try new things a bit more, but the weather, I think, was definitely a really cool thing for me as a student, for sure. But Aaron, and then the second part of that question I didn't catch, but if Aaron, you.
Yeah, student life and just generally what it's like to be a student at Gonzaga. The average credit load our students are taking is about 16 credits. So it works out to 5, maybe 6 classes once or twice. Monday, Wednesday, Friday courses are about an hour each. Tuesday, Thursday classes are about an hour and a half. That gives you a good amount of time in between to be able to decide what you want to do with it. I already mentioned earlier, we have 120 clubs that are active at any given time on campus. We have about 60% participation in intramural sports. So students are finding ways to get plugged in, even if they weren't maybe they were a varsity athlete, or maybe it's their first time trying something. I played volleyball for the first time on a co-ed team, and it was a great time, just a lot of fun to get to connect with Zags. The fitness center is open most days from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. So you can fit in an early morning workout or go and shoot some hoops with your friends for a 10 p.m. study break. The tickets to all the basketball games are free for students. So, there's that as well, that you can go and enjoy being part of big school spirit on a campus of only 5,000 students. I think the other thing that I would mention is just the vibrancy of life as a student on campus is in many ways a direct result of our students not leaving for home on the evenings or weekends. About a little over 80% of our students come from over 200 miles away. So even if they're from Washington, the vast majority of them are actually far enough away that they're going to be sticking around and finding things to be doing on campus at just about any given evening, any given weekend. So it's a very vibrant student life. There's lots of things to do always. And you have a really beautiful city of about 700,000 people. That's a half a mile walk along the Spokane River. You can go and watch a great concert at the Knitting Factory. You can go to the Spokane Arena. You can, go and watch a Broadway show. Hamilton is playing up this upcoming season. So there's lots of ways to make sure that you feel connected and engaged while you're here.
Awesome, thank you. So we've been getting quite a few questions about specific academic programs and life on campus. I just want to encourage everyone to register for an information session. We host those Mondays through Fridays and most Saturdays on our campus, but we do also host them every Tuesday afternoon virtually. So for some of these general questions about academics, please feel free to reach out to your admission counselor directly to get some more in-depth conversations, as well well as register for those information sessions and even faculty meetings through our visit office to get those questions answered. Lots of questions about internships. Same kind of deal. We have a wonderful Center for Career and Professional Development team on our campus. We have a 95% success rate. We know that job placement and career is very important in making your college decision. So that is something that is super important to us. But we want to keep the focus of this webinar a little bit more general and more specific on application processes. So just know that this is not going to be your only opportunity to answer or ask those questions and to get them answered. But we may not answer all of those. As I said, we have many other ways that you can get connected to learn more about specific academic programs or career and professional development, and even study abroad opportunities. Let's see, I'm thinking from there, we don't have any other specific application questions. If you have any specific to applying to Gonzaga, please feel free to put those in the Q&A. And again, any that we didn't quite answer are ones that we would really best be served following up with your admission counselor directly. So we will put that link in the chat again to find your admission counselor. So please use that link to get in contact. I will also put a link again in our webinars. We are hosting several webinars throughout the fall, including several on financial aid and scholarships, one for our nursing program, one for the honors program. So please register for those. And again, those recordings will be available. But any last words from Erin, Becky, or Sandra before we let our students and families go for the evening?
I think just don't be afraid. When I was in your shoes, I still am incredibly socially anxious. You wouldn't know it by the fact that I just hosted this webinar for multiple hundreds of people, but I think that the best thing to do is start engaging with the college process intentionally. The more that you're able to lean in, come to a high school visit, get involved, find a way to, connect with your friends and learn a little bit more about what they're thinking about college. Or, this is a process that's ultimately, it comes down to you and what you are looking for. And we can only do so much to support you unless you raise your hand and actively ask. That's what I usually tell students when they say, what's the key to succeeding in college too? It's raise your hand, because as soon as you start asking that question or seeking out that support, especially here, people come out of the woodwork to try and support you and make sure that you are getting everything that you are able to receive. So just know that we're resources for you. Your high school counselors in many cases are great resources as well. They can direct you to local scholarships. And they're also usually pretty nice people. So take advantage of their expertise. And check back in with our other webinars, because as FAFSA things might change, as the questions that come up in this process might evolve, we'll likely have more answers for you. Becky, Alexa?
Yeah, my only thing is, I repeated a little bit earlier, but we're not intimidating people. Please reach out to us with your questions. We're happy to talk about all those things. Do an interview, really dive into this process. I think one of the scariest things for me when I was looking at colleges was I was like, oh my gosh, I'm sending this email to an admission counselor, and I needed to be perfect in every way, and which is great. But I think one of the biggest things is we're also people on the other side of the application, the other side of the screen. So really just come into it and ask as many questions as possible. I'm happy to be here. It's literally our job to answer your questions, get to know you better. So take advantage of that, because that's something we really value in our office as well.
Yeah, kind of speaking on that with Becky, and we're kind of in a rare-ish moment that all four of us on this webinar are also Gonzaga alums, and I think it just speaks to how much we care about this university, how much we care about the community, and we know the value that it holds because of what it gave to us. And so we are admission counselors and not deny counselors, right? We genuinely do this job because we're excited to usher in the next era of Zags and to welcome people into our community. So please always reach out. Again, we have some questions that are coming into the chat that are a little bit more specific to each individual or their academic interest. So please use the links in the chat, schedule a meeting, reach out to your admission counselor. We would love to have you. Sandra, any parting words before we shut down the webinar?
Nope, just to reiterate, we have tons of opportunities for you to connect with your counselors as your resident visit coordinator here. That is my domain. So whether that's in person, if you're coming to campus, or if you can't make it to campus, just to reiterate, we have those virtual info sessions every single Tuesday at 4 o'clock Pacific time. We have meetings with admission counselors available every single day, and we can schedule them at other times if those aren't convenient for you. So with those individual questions, like we really want to be here to answer those, and we try to make it easy for you to be able to schedule them and reach out to us. So just don't hesitate. I put those links in the chat as well as the visit@gonzaga.edu email address. And we are really happy to help with any of those things to the best of our ability.
Awesome. Well, huge thank you to Erin, Becky, and Sandra for joining and sharing all of their insight. Huge thank you to all of you for joining us for our first webinar of the fall. Again, we have so many more upcoming ways to connect with us, including many more webinars to come. So please check those out and always reach out to us if you have any questions. We hope you have a wonderful evening, and we look forward to reading your applications.